So as Professor Lang was telling you, I do philosophy of language and philosophy of logic, and the topic I thought I would speak to tonight is truth, which seems like a very old, very central topic in philosophy. Certainly, philosophers have been talking about it for a good 2,500 years, and for a lot of that time, certainly for about 2,500 years, they've been concerned with a particular puzzle about truth. And this puzzle usually goes by the name of the liar paradox, although it isn't really about lying so much as about a puzzle to do with attributing truth to different kinds of truth bearers, like, say, sentences or propositions. And what I want to do is present this puzzle and then present a particular kind of solution to it. And this solution is, I think it's fair to say, deeply unpopular. It's regarded as a little bit shocking, a little bit wild, not something that's a very acceptable solution. And I'm going to try to persuade you that actually this is a much better idea than you might think. Okay, so here's the puzzle. At least one incarnation of it. Suppose we have a particular sentence. And the sentence says, sentence L is not true. So it's a sentence that says of a sentence, namely sentence L, that it has the truth value not true. Right? And here's kind of the twist. We need to know which sentence we're talking about. So, which sentence is sentence L? And the twist is that that very sentence is sentence L, right? L is a name for the sentence. Sentence L is not true. Okay, so this is a sentence that says of itself that it's not true, and that's maybe a little bit unusual, but it doesn't initially seem to be a huge problem. So we have lots of sentences that talk about themselves and say perfectly reasonable things about themselves. So for example, this sentence contains fewer than 100 characters. That seems straightforwardly true, right? It seems like that sentence says something unexceptional and it's correct. Or this sentence is not grammatical. That seems to make sense. I think it's false. That sentence was grammatical, right? So we have sentences that talk about themselves. The problem is this particular sentence, sentence L is not true, gets us into trouble. And to see the trouble, you have to try to assign a truth value to it. And so this is kind of starting to get into the reasoning that gets us into difficulty. We say, okay, there seem to be a couple of possibilities about what the truth value of that sentence could be. First possibility is it might be true. Second possibility is it might not be true. All right, so let's start by assuming that it's true and see what happens. Right? So we assume that the sentence is true, and sort of a general thought that you might have about sentences are true. If a sentence is true, then what it says is the case. Right? What it says is correct. So what does that sentence say? It says sentence L is not true. Right? So that must be the case. It must be that sentence L is not true. But that contradicts the assumption we just made. Right? We assumed that sentence L was true, and we got the conclusion sentence L is not true. So that assumption must have been wrong, because we ended up with a contradiction. Okay, so let's go back to the other assumption. It must be the case that sentence L is not true. Okay, so sentence L is not true, but that's just what it says, right? It says sentence L is not true. And if that's the case, then what it says is correct. It's true. Wait, but we started out with the assumption that sentence L is not true, and we got the conclusion that it's true, right? That's another contradiction. So here's the situation we're in. There seem to be two possibilities. Sentence L is true, sentence L is not true. We considered both and got contradictions either way. So now we're getting a contradiction whatever assumption we make, right? We seem to be getting a contradiction just from, say, the existence of this sentence and some sort of very reasonable steps in argument. All right, so this is the kind of thing that in philosophy we call a paradox. You start out with some fairly obvious claims that seem to be straightforwardly true. And you take some steps that seem to be good steps, right? They seem like they preserve truth. They're not going to take you from truth to falsity. And just by taking those steps, you end up with a conclusion that seems to be obviously false, namely a contradiction. Right? And there's this general thought in philosophy that contradictions can't be true. Right? They're not the kind of thing that could be true. And if you reason from true claims, by truth-preserving steps, and you've got something that's not true, then something's gone wrong. Okay, you must have made a mistake somewhere. Okay, standard sort of strategy for dealing with a paradox like this, we've got to figure out what's gone wrong, so we're going to look at it really, really carefully. We're going to break down all the steps. We're going to look at all those claims that we started with and say, oh, are they really true? Like, did we make a mistake in assessing one of those as true? Or did we make a step that was a mistaken step in our reasoning? There are lots of exciting, interesting, technical, difficult theories of truth that attempt to give you a solution to this paradox by saying, for example, that one of the claims that we started with isn't really true, or that one of the steps that we made isn't really truth-preserving. And they're interesting and exciting, but they're also so technical that it would take too long for me to explain to you all these sort of interesting, exciting solutions to the paradox, because I only have 15 minutes and not 15 weeks. So, that wasn't a warning.
No.
Okay. All right, so I'm just going to tell you this. All the solutions kind of suck. They're so complicated. Like, you can't believe that something as simple as truth would need this really, really complicated theory, and they often have consequences about language that seem really implausible. They tell you that you can't say things which you seem to be perfectly obviously able to say. They tell you that things aren't meaningful that seem to be straightforwardly meaningful, and there's so many of them that it's sort of unsatisfying, right? It's really hard to think of one of these theories, oh yeah, that's obviously right. I'm so glad that we saw that mistake that we made, right? And so, in this particular situation, a certain crazy, wild kind of solution to the paradox has been proposed, and the solution is this. The conclusion is correct. Some contradictions actually are true. Okay? So this is a view that's sometimes called dialetheism. So dialetheism is the view that there can be true contradictions. And the view says, look, we've got a pretty good argument that there is a true contradiction, and it's the liar paradox. You start out with some premises that seem to be true, and you make what seem to be truth-preserving steps, and then you get this contradiction. So what should you conclude? Well, that it's true, right? You started out with true stuff, and you took truth-preserving steps. That seems good reason to think that the conclusion is true. Okay, so this is the wild idea. Another, like, slightly sort of thing you could say in favor of it is that it explains why it's been so hard to solve this paradox, right? Why 2,500 years of very, very bright people, and especially, you know, in the 20th century, some very brilliant mathematical minds, people like Alfred Tarski or Saul Kripke, studying this paradox and trying to come up with some solutions, and still there's not anything quite satisfying. Why is that? It's because the argument's valid. It's a good argument, and it has a true conclusion. Right. Okay, here's one reason why I think this view is not very popular. Right. It's really hard to see how a contradiction could be true. Right. So suppose I take the sentence, this table has 4 legs. Right. And then I also take the negation of that sentence, right? This table does not have 4 legs. Right? So a contradiction would be the conjunction of those two things. This table has 4 legs, and it's not the case that this table has 4 legs. And when I try to imagine that being true, one of the problems seems to be that I'm trying to require the world to be 2 incompatible ways. Right? I want it to be a certain way where it has 4 legs, and then I want it to be this other way where the sentence, it's not the case that it has 4 legs, is true, and I just can't see how the world could satisfy both conditions. Right? So it's sort of almost unimaginable that contradiction could be true. And so what I want to try to do is describe a way of thinking about this view on which there are true contradictions that doesn't require anything like that. And in order to get there, I'm going to talk a little bit about a different kind of view, a view associated with vagueness. So when people are talking about vagueness in philosophy of language, they're actually often talking about something fairly specific, something more specific than the word vagueness is used to pick out in sort of everyday language. And the best way, I think, to maybe sort of get you latched onto the correct idea is to give you a couple of examples. So a couple of sort of paradigm cases of vague expressions in English are heap and red. And what sort of makes them special is that with both of these words, there seem to be really clear cases of things about which it's true to say that they're, say, heaps or red, and really clear cases about which it's true to say that they're not heaps or not red, and then there are some difficult cases where it's not very clear exactly what you should say. So, for example, if you had 1,000 grains of sand piled up here, right, I think it would be true to say that that was a heap of sand. And if you just had 1 grain of sand balanced on this laptop, I think it would be true to say, clearly true to say that that's not a heap of sand. But somewhere between 1,000 and 1, there are numbers such that it's really not very obvious whether they count as heaps. Like maybe if you just had 5 grains of sand, could that really be a heap? Right? If I asked you to say, pour out a heap of sand over there, and you've got 5 grains of sand, and you sort of squish them together for me, right? Is that clearly satisfying the request? Right? So it's sort of unclear, right? So some really clear cases, some really clear cases of not being that thing, and then some stuff in the middle. So same with red. So if I had a series of color cards, say 100 of them, and I spread them out in front of you, and the one at this end is like bright as red can be, right? Obviously red. And the one at this end is orange, like clearly orange. Anyone would say it was orange and not red. And then the cards gradually fade from one side to the other, getting closer and closer to orange and further away from red. Okay, card at one end, clearly it's red, right? Red applies to that. Card at the other end, clearly not red because it's orange. But there's some stuff in the middle where, it's not very obvious whether you should say it's red or whether you should say it's not red. Okay, people often say about vagueness that it's just a phenomenon that arises from our language. It's not like something that's really out there in the world. So they say, yeah, there's cards in the middle. They have a perfectly determinate color. It's not like the world is like, unclear on the way it is, right? But the problem is this word red, it's not very clear, we haven't made it clear, we haven't made the rules clear enough what the boundary is between, say, red and not red. So given that our language is, and you might think it's sort of faulty in this way, it's not quite as precise as it could be, we have this problem where sometimes the sentence, this is red, it's really not clear what its truth value is. And here's kind of a pictorial way to think about the situation. I'm really tempted to take my chalk and draw on these pink walls. But I've only been here 3 weeks, and I think it might be a little bit early to get in that much trouble. So imagine that I'm drawing this in front of you, right? There's a big box, and in this box is all the stuff in the world, right? It's the universe. And then I draw a smaller circle in the box, and that's all the things that are red, right? So all the cards right at this end of the spectrum, and then I draw another circle, not overlapping with the first one, right? And in it, there's all the things that are not red, right? Of which it's true to say that they're not red. And then there's going to be, so you might think, some stuff in the middle where, we just haven't been clear enough about, what it is to be red. And if we were, we could either put them in one circle or the other, but given that our word is kind of faulty in this way, we just have to leave them in the middle. Kind of out in the cold. Okay, now imagine a different situation. So back to a big box with everything in the universe, and we want to draw a circle around all the things that are true, right? So, some sentences are true, say snow is white, 2 + 2 = 4, all those things go in that circle. And then I draw another circle, and that's all the things that are not true. So snow is purple, 2 + 2 = 5, they all go in there. And I think I've given the rules for being true or being not true relatively clearly, but I could have made a mistake, right? In particular, there might be some really weird cases such that they end up in the overlap between these two circles. And what the dialetheist is proposing is sentence L, the one we started out with, it goes in there, in that overlap between the two circles. So sentence L is true, sentence L is not true, and so there are some true contradictions. Okay, thank you.